Welcome, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well. We're going to talk about the Brian Thompson murder case. I hope everybody's doing well and having a nice day so far. Welcome to my channel if you are new here, and welcome back if you're returning. I used to do a lot of these Astrology of Crime videos, but I took a break from that. But this case has gotten a lot of attention, and that's another issue. I mean, there are on average 400 murders, I believe, a year in New York City. That's like 1.9 a day, I think, and some change, 1.9 or something like that. And they don't get really much coverage at all. I mean, they really ripped up the world in order to find this guy. And it's a very interesting case. So I wanted to cover it. And I don't normally do this, although I may start. It depends. But if you're interested in any of my services, readings, or coaching, or gift certificates, well, check out my website, psychicsun.com. The link to that is in the description below. So a note before we get started, this analysis is offered with deep respect for all people who are involved in this tragedy. While we examine the astrological and systemic patterns at play, we acknowledge the very real human cost and send healing energy to all affected, because this is it's a tragedy on multiple levels. Not only did we lose Brian Thompson, a father of two, but we also lost, the world lost, somebody who could have made a big difference in this world, and that's Luigi Mangione. He was certainly going places and certainly a very, very talented and impressive individual by all counts. So let's go over this. Brief overview. I'm not going to belabor it because I'm sure you know about the case. But so Brian Thompson, the victim, was in New York City for an annual United Health Group investors meeting. And on December 4th, around 6:44 a.m., he was walking along West 54th, and an assailant dressed in a light brown and cream-colored hoodie waited across the street from the hotel for several minutes, then crossed over when he saw Thompson standing approximately 20 feet away from Thompson. When he arrived at the entrance, the assailant fired 3 times at him from a suppressed 9mm pistol, striking him in the back and the right calf. Now, the big focus... Oh, you made it, Kasmar! You made it! Thanks so much for joining. I thought you'd like this, that's for sure. So the public reaction was very, very surprising. People were essentially saying that Thompson got his just desserts because UnitedHealthcare denies a lot of claims, and he's at the helm of it. They also found out that a lot of claims were being denied by an AI system. 90% of claims due to this AI system were denied. So that puts things in perspective. I think people were upset thinking that an AI tool, was used to make decisions about one's health. So a lot of people were celebrating the fact that Brian Thompson died, which is crazy, right? But it calls attention to the issues with healthcare, of course. And it also calls attention to Pluto and Aquarius, really. I mean, that's the first thing that I thought when I heard about this case, because we spoke about this. Pluto is all about power, and Aquarius is the people. So we're talking about power of the people. And when Pluto is in Capricorn, these hierarchies were very much in charge. And as we've been speaking about with Pluto and Aquarius, the people are in charge. The people are the ones who have the power. And we spoke about this a few weeks back when I did my presentation on Pluto, that the people are going to be empowered and they're not going to be suffering injustice. They're not going to be taking anything laying down. And that is really clear here. This is a very, very strong aspect of Pluto and Aquarius. And because of the aspects, especially between Pluto and Mars, as we move into 2025, it's highly likely that you'll see similar situations like this, right? Yes, exactly. He was a dad. He was a human being. And, I understand that a lot of people There was something in terms of him being accused of insider trading, etc. Okay, well, we can't kill everybody who's involved in insider trading. Brian Thompson was part of this system. So he's part of the system, but who else is? The guy who brings him coffee, and his, taxi driver, and his secretary, right? We're supposed to kill all of these other people too, because they're part of the system. I mean, it's not the way, right? But it brings up a lot of issues. But the real question that I think is really important is, what about the system of the body? And what if we focused more on our own systems in such a way that we don't need healthcare? Obviously, there's a certain amount of healthcare I guess everybody might need, right? To make sure everything's working well. But there's an ability that you have to heal yourself. And I'm not suggesting that you don't need doctors. Of course, doctors are helpful and they can be very, very useful. And so can surgeries. But the system of our bodies and the system that we live in, and if we can change that system, we will be less likely to need healthcare. We'll be less likely to need doctors, right? The theory is that if we wind up releasing resistance to the authentic self, we'll never get sick. Our bodies will be all tuned up and they'll feel really great. And that's really what I want to look at today, how through this case, we can really start to understand the importance of the human body and how the body doesn't lie, and how sometimes you don't need only science. Sometimes you need to really tap into the spirituality, right? And there's that balance between science and spirituality. And, this was the suspect, the prime suspect, Mangione. He was quite the scientist, right? He was a complete scientist. And all of the books that he's read in terms of what we see on social media, on his Goodreads, all of it's science-based. Nothing is metaphysical in nature. Not one thing. I think that at one point he was thinking about using psychedelics. I wouldn't necessarily conflate using psychedelics with spirituality, but my point being is that you can't just be scientific about these things. You have to also incorporate the psycho-emotional aspects, right? And if he did, he may have been healed, right? He may not have required surgery. I mean, at 26 to get a spinal surgery, there's a post on Reddit, assumedly from him, in which he's telling somebody else how they can actually get this surgery, because doctors don't do it normally, especially for somebody so young. And he was telling them, oh, well, you can say that, oh, well, it's going to keep you from working. You can say this, you can say that. Really, I wonder if it's a matter of he depended too much on science, and as a result was not healed, and he couldn't live with that, right? So we're going to talk all about those things, but essentially we want to really look at our own systems and really learn to listen to our bodies and learn to heal ourselves, which we can. So there are three levels of systems that become very apparent in this case. There's a healthcare system, specifically UnitedHealthcare, with their policies and how they use AI to deny 90% of claims, allegedly. And then there's systemic issues in American healthcare overall, right? Where the most powerful, richest country, yet we have a very low life expectancy rate. Other countries have free healthcare. We don't, and we have to fight to get our claims paid, etc. So, okay, we get that. The healthcare system is broken, is flawed. But more important, and again, we could nip this in the bud if we focus really on the physical symptom for all of us. And we might not need healthcare if we can focus on our systems and we can do a little bit of analysis to see how we operate the system in which we were brought into this world, and making those adjustments so that we can feel as perfect as possible. So we have the physical symptom. We have Mangione's body as a system. That's a system. We're going to talk about how he had an accident before his surgery, surfing, which is very metaphorical. Surfing, riding the waves, riding emotion. And we're going to talk about how that plays into his astrology chart and the transits during that time. And we're also going to look at the impact of surgical intervention. And our key question is, was surgery the right solution? So either it could be a matter of surgery was not necessary, or surgery was botched, it was a bad surgery, or surgery was not botched, it was successful, but he wasn't patient enough to allow it to heal. And there are elements in his chart that would indicate impatience, which we'll talk about. And then, of course, we have the root system. So when Mangione is in his mother's belly, depending on what is going on in her head, you know, if a pregnant woman smokes a cigarette, she shares that with the child. If a pregnant woman is not necessarily sure whether or not she wants to have the baby is getting that intel, right? So there's conditioning before the baby is even born. And then you have early environmental conditioning. You have somebody, all of us are born into certain systems, right? And we inherit our family's system and their belief structures. And those might not align with who we are. They may not align with our authentic self, which leads to emotional suppression. And when you are suppressing your feelings of, I don't feel like I belong here, or these beliefs don't align with who I really am, etc., and you suppress your emotions, then you're going to see a physical manifestation of those, right? The body cannot lie. And pain in the back usually has to do with pain in the past, or always metaphorically and metaphysically. And what happens is, if you're in pain physically, or you're dealing with something mentally that's painful, there's often a disconnect between the mind and the body. And instead of going within and seeking that healing, that emotional healing, well, Mangione seems to have really focused all on the science, too much on the science. So what we're going to do is look at the astrology. We're going to look at the event chart for the murder, and we're going to see how the planets that, or points that rule the victim as well as the perpetrator are in mutual reception, and that's when two planets are in each other's signs of rulership. We're going to look at Mangione's chart. We're going to see how he was a very, very earthy individual. He was a Taurus with a Virgo moon, it looks like. I mean, the moon was in Virgo that day, so that's a lot of earth energy. Now, you got to think, earth signs are very, very natural, and we saw that he has foreign objects in his body. Now, a lot of people have foreign objects in their bodies after surgery, and they're just fine. But, you know, the way this was placed, I mean, I think there's an argument that can be made that that sense of lack of naturalness, right? Having foreign objects in one's body, especially for somebody who's so connected to their body, as a Taurus Virgo might be, I mean, that could be quite a problem, right? It's just, it's weird to have something that is foreign in your body, right? The body should be working well. Then we're going to look at the transits, the Mangione's transits, the moment of the attack, and also Mangione's transits during a surfing accident. This took place on July 4th, 2022. And then we're going to look at key aspects and interpretation, how he probably suffered an identity crisis due to Uranus and Mars, those aspects that were transiting. So this is the crime chart of December 4th, 2024, 6:44, I think it was 6:44 a.m., 6:46 a.m., excuse me. So what's interesting here is that you have the first house, which is the victim. We have the sun and we have the Mercury there. And he was obviously, you know, a big guy, right? The sun, powerful, strong. And Mercury, was there too next to the sun. So he was probably doing something that he had done before. If this was his second time at this conference, maybe he wound up doing more than one run to that, from his hotel to the conference place, or maybe he was getting coffee, who knows, right? But what's most interesting is that the rising sign of the crime chart is the victim. So Brian Thompson is represented here by Sagittarius. And then we see the ruler of Sagittarius, and that's Jupiter. And Jupiter is in the 7th house, in the house of the perpetrator. So we have the ruler of the 1st house, which identifies the victim, in the sign, in the house, of the perpetrator. So what does this possibly mean? Well, at least from the assailant's perspective, the victim is inside his body, which would be this over here, these claws. Now, that's just very, very interesting, right? So Mangione could have been operating from that belief that something is in my body that shouldn't be here. It's causing me now more pain. I paid all of this money. I need more help. I'm not getting my claims approved, etc. Right? And you got to remember, Mangione is a Taurus. That is a very, very earthy sign. They're very, very much about their bodies. Then he has a Virgo moon. They're very, very, very connected to their bodies. Their bodies are extremely sensitive. I can't even fathom being an earth sign to have plates or metal or foreign objects in one's body. That is a very, very strange experience for somebody who is connected to their body and of the natural world, right? So we have that. Then we look at Mars in the crime chart. Mars in the crime chart usually indicates the nature of the crime as well as the level of violence involved. We have Mars here in Leo. So Leo is fixed fire. The gun, it was a steady 3 shots, right? And the bullets actually had engravings on them. Deny, defend, I think it was depose on the bullets. So, there's a certain showiness, right? There's a certain expression. Even the bullets are expressing his discontent. And the 8th house also speaks about what might be hidden in terms of the crime or the motivation for the crime. Now, the 8th house rules insurance. It also rules sex, death, trauma. One thing is really with that Mars and Leo is really about pride, and 8th house is the sexual house, right? And Mangione had spoken to one of his friends of how he can't perform sexually due to his back injuries. Again, for a Taurus is a very, very, very sensual sign, right? So for him, and we'll talk about his natal chart, especially with his sun conjuncting Mars, his sexuality is a big part of him. So when he has this going on with his body, especially after this surgery, there's a certain sense of his masculinity now. He's being deprived of being a man, of enjoying sexual exploits, etc. Right? So that's pretty clear there. And also, it's pretty on the nose with the 8th house. That does have to do with insurance, other people's inheritance. It does have to do with inheritances as well, the 8th house, but not necessarily in this case. And it also rules sharp objects. I mean, when you have surgery, somebody carves into your person. And even if you're unconscious, even if you're under anesthesia, I think that, especially if you're trepidatious about something, I mean, it's certainly a trauma, right? So that could be as well why we have Mars there in the 8th house. So when we look at Mangione's chart, and luckily we don't have his time of birth, but we do have a good birth date for him, May 6, 1998. Now, what I did, because we don't have the time of his birth, is I did a sunrise chart, which essentially makes his rising sign the same as his sun sign. So first thing we notice, his sun is in the sign of Taurus. Now that sun is really, really, really close to Mars. So his sun in Taurus, his core identity, his vitality is directly joined with Mars, which has to do with drive, action, and physical energy. And both planets are in Taurus, of course, that fixed Earth sign. So the sun in the chart is the will, and that is conjoined with physical activity. So his identity is very, very much linked and lined up with his ability to move physically. And that's enhanced, of course, by Taurus's connection to the physical body. This sun conjunct Mars in his chart suggests someone whose identity is strongly tied to physical activity. He has natural athletic ability and strong physical presence, which we saw. Now, that sun and that Mars, if you notice, if you follow the yellow over here, it goes right across from Chiron. So the sun and the Mars in his chart oppose Chiron, and they sit by sitting 180 degrees across from Chiron. The Chiron is the wounded healer. So this creates a direct face-off between his physical vitality and core woundedness. So before Brian, oh my God, I keep doing that. Before Mangione even got here, right? Or when he took his first breath, really, that's when the chart is made. You know, he came to deal with these lessons. He came to deal with this opposition to Chiron, which is about direct tension between his physical strength and drive and his woundedness that he had from past lives. In the house of health, by the way, right? It's in that 6th house. So this could be about physical expression, meeting resistance through pain or limitation. He had back issues since he was a child. His healing journey is directly connected to his physical identity. So it made sense why he was trying to heal via surfing, stuff like that. And with that Chiron opposition, he may have experienced reoccurring challenges when expressing physical power. Now he has his moon in Virgo over here. If you look here at number 2, he has his, let me show this. Number 2 right over here. He has his moon in the sign of Virgo. So that Virgo moon makes the body very, very, very sensitive. And it is opposing Jupiter at 20 degrees. So his moon's at 19 Virgo, and Jupiter is at 20 degrees Pisces. That's almost an exact opposition. So the moon is opposing Jupiter. So his emotional needs and instincts, his moon is opposing Jupiter, which is his expansion, what he believes. And the moon is an analytical Virgo, and Virgo is the hypochondriac of the zodiac. And they're usually have a lot of issues or ailments, right? Not saying that they're not real, but often they're psychosomatic, right? And if you notice on his Reddits, I mean, it was not just back issues. He had Lyme disease as a child. He spoke of brain fog. He had numbness. I mean, he had a lot of freaking issues, But there's a critical nature of Virgo, meaning that expansive force of Jupiter. And that could also be perfectionism. I mean, he did have quite the nice body. I mean, you don't get a 6-pack like that without trying, typically. And also his amazing academic record. I mean, obviously, he put a lot of pressure on himself, which arguably could have also contributed to his health problems. And with that Virgo moon opposing Jupiter, there may have been some kind of tension between control and release, right? We have unpredictable disruptions with the Uranian square, because Uranus over here, if you look at where number 3 is, we have Uranus at 12 degrees Aquarius, making an exact, well, not an exact square, but very close to exact 3-degree orb between his sun and 5 degrees between his Mars. So that's a big deal. Uranus is about sudden change and rebellion, and that's creating tension between his core self and his athletic nature, right? So there's unpredictable disruptions with Uranus there to his physical energy. There might be sudden changes in how he expresses his identity. He might have physical energy that comes in unexpected bursts with Uranus there. Now that Uranus at 12 degrees also makes a quincunx, that's a 150-degree angle to the moon. So we have Uranus in Aquarius at 12 degrees, making quincunx to his moon in Virgo. And that requires constant adjustments. And if you remember that word, adjustments, that's the issue, right? He needed to have his body realigned. His body was out of alignment. So difficulty with that moon integrating emotional needs with the changes around him. There might be a constant need to adjust between stability and disruption. And it's challenged in finding emotional grounding during transitions. And that's typical of Taurus anyway. Taurus doesn't like change. And Taurus is loyal. Very, very, very loyal. Well, and again, I mean, every gift is a curse. There could have been, I mean, I think that with Mangione's chart, clearly there wasn't some kind of healing that needed to take place. Otherwise, not only would he not have shot Thompson, but he probably would have been in better health. And Taurus is very, very loyal. Now, that loyalty is usually a really good thing. They're very loyal to their friends, especially their family and their loved ones and their spouses, etc. But what happens when we're loyal to our which results, our loyalty results in our own detriment? What if I'm loyal to a system that doesn't work for who I am authentically? What if I'm so loyal to my parents, I refuse to judge them and therefore then scapegoat other people who are outside of the family? Incidentally, his family was very, very wealthy and very much involved in healthcare. They, I believe, owned a nursing home or a healthcare facility, right? Now, a Taurus is not only really loyal, but it's a sign of emotional detachment. So if he had some issues or gripes, not only being a Taurus would he have been loyal, perhaps, to his family, but also removed and emotionally detached to such an extent that he doesn't realize that his parents could have been the problem or the systems in which he was raised was a problem. There's not only a loyalty, but also an emotional detachment or removal that kept him from actually seeing the truth. And what winds up happening? Well, he scapegoats Thompson. And it works really well for him in the sense that this is somebody that a lot of people might, and he was right if he assumed this, would celebrate his murder, right? And plenty of people did. So, yeah, it's very, very interesting. Additionally, is there anything else I want to look at here with you guys? No, we'll go to the transits. So, the day of the murder, a few things were going on. One, for all of us, Mercury was opposite Jupiter. And that was something that we all dealt with. So Mercury is communication and thought. That was retrograde. It was opposing Jupiter, which is retrograde, which is about expansion and beliefs. So double retrograde really has to do with internal review. It's all about our internal processes, and things can go awry with these retrogrades. But this was most likely very, very much planned in advance. It also may have been something that he tried to do previously, but didn't do it. So this may have been the second go at it with those retrogrades. With that opposition between Mercury and Jupiter, there was probably distorted thinking or judgment for all of us. Not in terms of Mangione. I think that he knew exactly what he was doing, and it wasn't his distorted thinking, but it may have been a matter of, this is a very smart individual. Why, with all that money, did he stay in the United States? Why is he in McDonald's? Why couldn't he come up with some kind of disguise that allows him to not be caught? So it makes sense that, he made those screw ups. I mean, obviously it wasn't total screw up. I mean, he could have gotten away with it. I mean, he had foreign currency on him. There's a lot of things that he could have done. Additionally, we have, in terms of transits, transiting Chiron was literally right exact on his Mercury. So transiting Chiron again is the wounded healer, has to do with woundedness. And it being exactly conjunct his natal Mercury is his mind. Mercury's his mind, his communication. So there's a direct activation of thought patterns by the wounded healer. So core wounds may directly be affecting his thought processes with that aspect. Past pain may have surfaced through mental channels. There's a potential crisis point in understanding his personal woundedness. And really, mental patterns connected to earliest wounds may have been activated. Now, what's interesting too, the ascendant for the crime chart was, as we saw before, 7 degrees Sagittarius. Now, where is Mangione's Pluto, which has to do with death and power and rebirth? At 7 degrees Sagittarius. The ascendant at the time of the attack is exactly on Mangione's Pluto. So the event ascendant, the moment's energy, is conjunct his natal Pluto, which has to do with his transformation and his power. And it activated his deepest transformative energy. It was a moment of profound personal transformation. Hidden or repressed energies came to the surface. Power dynamics became manifest. Deep psychological material emerging into action. And a transformative moment that cannot be reversed. That's really very clear. So yeah, there's a lot going on here that really speaks of wounded thinking patterns, deep psychological material manifesting, irreversible moment of change, and that wounded expression. That wounded expression. Now, when we look at a surfing accident, and this really happened, this really, I think, catalyzed a lot of issues for him. Happened July 4th, 2022, they say. First thing that we notice, because again, Mangione's natal chart is the inner wheel, and the outer wheel is the day of the surfing accident. So you have Uranus on his sun and exactly conjunct his Mars. So Uranus has to do with sudden change and accidents, among other things, and directly on his sun is perhaps sudden change and accidents to his life force or affecting his physical activity with Mars, right? Uranus brings that disruptive energy to his core physical identity. And, you know, that can, with Uranus hitting his sun and Mars, that could be sudden disruption of physical vitality, which is what happened. Unexpected event affecting bodily strength, that happened. Lightning-like impact to his physical body, that happened. Radical change in how body functions, that happened. Disruption to natural physical expression, that happened. Now, we also have Chiron there. Not only is it opposite his sun and Mars, but it's also being opposed by Uranus, right? So with that, we have change and disruption affecting his woundedness, right? So there's an agitation there too, with something surprising Uranus hitting his woundedness, catalyzing old woundedness. Meanwhile, we also have transiting Mars on his Saturn. So transit Mars is about action, and it can be accidents too. And Saturn is about limitation and structure, and it could be the physical body. So the physical energy, Mars, meets the point of restriction, and it doesn't go very well, right? So the action principle, Mars, hits this wall of limitation indicated by Saturn. So physical force meets structural limitation. Action is being restricted or blocked. Potential for injury through impact is exactly what happened. So it's the perfect storm. He should not have gone surfing that day, right? But again, that Mars conjuncting his sun, he's a bit of a daredevil, and he needs to physically express himself. But that day was very catastrophic. And the moon was in Virgo, making his body and himself much more sensitive than usual. So that surfing incident, the immediate impact of it, it triggered a pre-existing condition of spondylolisthesis, spondylolisthesis, which he had for a while. He was confined to bed for a week after this. Weeks later, he slipped on a piece of paper. According to his Reddit, he wrote, "My right glute locked and right leg shut down for a week. Couldn't support any weight on it." He developed constant intermittent numbness for a Taurus. Jesus Christ, that's very tough for a very physical Taurus. He expressed fear on Reddit about the implications of this pain, and he was unable to engage in physical intimacy. He told a friend, again, with that Mars, there is an inherent sexuality to his identity with it being so close to the sun, with it being conjunct the sun. And as we looked in the event chart, part of the issue with the 8th house or hidden motivations with the crime was Mars and Leo. And Mars is joy. Mars and Leo, it could be said as joy and strength exercise. In the 8th house, very, very sexual energies. There may have been a lot of pride that was hurt by his lack of being able to perform sexually. So he had a 1/2 inch spinal misalignment, which he notes on his Reddit. So medical intervention, 2023 to 2024, he goes through a spinal surgery. He posts an x-ray showing metal pins in his spine. Reported initial symptom improvement. So initially, he was very pro the surgery. But then in May of 2023, he reposted an X post referring to most doctors as basically worthless. He sent his spine x-ray to this guy by the name of Martin, one of his friends. His friend expressed concern about the appearance. He last communicated with Martin saying that he had spine stuff to figure out, and his contact with his family ceased around this time. So he was depressed during this, and he lost all contact. Now you got to remember, this guy was in boarding school. He went to UPenn. I mean, he's typically a very consistent individual. Did he work at McDonald's? No, I don't think he worked at McDonald's. He actually worked for a firm in Santa Monica. Was the last job he held. No, this guy was extremely intelligent and extremely gifted and impressive intellectually. What's interesting, though, is that I really fail to believe that this was a money thing, because his parents were loaded, right? I mean, that's not to say that his really rich parents, gave him all the money in the world. A lot of parents are, they cut their child off at 26 and they're not in their insurance. But I find it hard to believe that it was really a monetary thing just because he comes from so much wealth. I think it's more a matter of, again, the physicality, that they perhaps did this surgery unnecessarily, or it could have been a matter of he pushed for this surgery and they finally gave it to him. And that might have been what made this happen, created this event or contributed to him killing Thompson. So the point that I want to make here for all of us is the body is the prophet. When we're talking about the lower back, we're talking about the root chakra, perhaps the sacral chakra as well, but the root chakra is really important. It's how we're grounded. It's where life happens. It's that feeling of being alive in a body. Now, to improve the root chakra, and we all should be doing this, we can calm down first. That's the first thing that we need to do, is either calm down or activate our adrenals if we're really, really asleep, and calm them down if we're too revved up. It's about resolving any money issues, trusting peace, being okay with peace, cultivating feelings of safety, increasing self-reliance. Exercise helps with that. Honoring the body, relaxing, just being, surrounding yourself with rooted people. For all of us, tiger's eye could help with the root chakra. So could bloodstone, hematite, as well as smoky quartz. Vetiver, sandalwood, patchouli, frankincense, all good essential oils to help with the root chakra. And I would get the book, if you haven't gotten it already, You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. So the body does not lie. It cannot lie. There's also another book called The Body Keeps the Score. It's a bit thick and scientific, But it's very, very helpful to see how this psychologist, I believe he was, from Harvard, spoke about how trauma is stored in the body. And if we keep using science and metal rods and carving into our person to fix things, well, we might not be better off. So the body cannot lie. Physical symptoms are messages. So you want to listen to your body. If your body is not feeling good, it is trying to tell you something. Now, batteries not included. Having metal rods in one's body is not ideal. And again, I understand that there are instances in which that has to happen. But before we get to that point, I believe that it's important to really look at the mental, psycho-emotional roots of illness. Because again, especially just looking at the sun sign of this individual, his loyalty as a Taurus, he was loyal to his systems that did not work for him authentically. And not only was he loyal to his systems, but with his Virgo moon, he was probably very perfectionistic about being loyal to his systems. So batteries not included. The body can heal itself oftentimes. Sometimes it can't. And obviously, you want to trust medical professionals. There are reasons why doctors and hospitals exist. And oftentimes, we need their help. However, there's a lot of stuff that we can do. We don't need to really think about putting foreign things in our bodies. For a Taurus, I can only imagine how terrible for a Taurus, earthy, grounded, natural-bodied Taurus, to have a plate or these foreign objects at the base of his spine. I mean, for somebody who's a Taurus, who's so connected to his physicality, I think the mentality would have been, well, what do I have to lose? What do I have to lose by killing the CEO? I can't move. I can't surf. I can't do anything. I can't have sex. I can't even walk. Even sitting down hurts me. I have nothing to lose. I think that was his mentality. Because somebody who's so earthy and so connected to their physicality, if that is their top tier value, enjoying their body, and they cannot enjoy their body, well, what's the use? What do I have to lose? I have nothing to lose. I can't do this. I can't do that. So there are ways to heal that. So science versus spirit. Don't ignore your body's wisdom. Obviously, go to the doctor. Get your tests. Get your scans, whatever. But also remember that you may have some emotional issues that are making you not feel good physically. Now, remember, there's a relationship between the emotional and physical alignment. And really, when we're open energetically, and we're not blocking or disconnected from the body, the earth, the power of the earth, will rise up from the earth and fuel you. You will be nurtured and loved and given energy by the earth, but you have to be open to it. If you're not open to it, or if there's a misalignment, or you've shut down your emotions, or you've shut down your body, you're not going to be able to get that healing. So you want to make sure that all your chakras are open, particularly that base chakra. And in making sure that base chakra is open, the natural healing energy from the earth will be able to help heal you. So definitely keep that in mind. You want to really tap into the natural energy of abundance that is all around us. There's constantly love and healing energy being flowed to us, but we have to be in proximity to it. We have to see it. We have to believe it, because it's not really clear, right? So you want to make sure your body's open. So improving the system. Let's make sure that out of this awful, awful tragedy for everybody involved, that we learn something. Let's learn to honor our physical symptoms as messages. If you have something that is not feeling good, that is an issue that is telling you something. Listen. Don't ignore it. Don't be the hero. Listen to it and do whatever you can to help heal it. And question your loyalty. What are you being loyal to exactly? Are you being loyal to systems that do not serve you authentically? Are you doing what you think that you should do in life, as opposed to something that is more of a natural fit? And that is key, natural fit. So question those systems that you've inherited. And then finally, healing. Allow that universal energy flow. There is energy in the earth that can heal your body, but you have to be open to it, which means that you have to allow yourself to release old pain and heal the past. The back has to do with the past. Pain in the back, pain in the past. So you want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to send love, healing energy to your past, to who you were back then, to all parties involved. Forgiveness is helpful, but most important, I think it's about flowing with your feelings from the past, because shutting down those feelings shuts down the body. And true healing begins with hearing our body's wisdom. So definitely listen to your body. If there's anything that we can take away from this tragedy, maybe it's listening to our bodies more. So thank you all so much for joining me today. I do appreciate it. If you have any questions, well, let me know now, or you can put them in the comments. And remember, this analysis is offered with deep respect for all involved in this tragedy. While we examine the astrological and systemic patterns at play, we acknowledge the very real human cost and send healing energy to all affected. Yes, Brian Thompson was part of the system, but like I said, we can't kill everybody. What are we going to do? Kill the mailman that brings him his mail? Are we going to kill his secretary? We can't do that, right? We have to really look at, I think, first making sure that our systems are secure, because if our systems are working well, then we most likely will not need healthcare, or not need it to the extent that we otherwise could. So focus on your system, your body, and make sure you're operating within systems that feel right to you. So you don't need doctors. That's the goal, right? To not need healthcare. That's the big system that we want to heal. It was a tragedy. Was he okay mentally? I would say no, he wasn't. I mean, I think anybody who kills somebody, they're not well mentally. I don't think. Although some might make an argument that he was, but I don't think that he was. I think that due to all the pressure that was on him being such an overachiever, and you work so hard. I mean, getting into one of these schools is no mean feat, let alone being valedictorian of a prep school. I mean, this guy, not only was he very, very bright, but he obviously had to work extremely hard. So you work really hard, you bust your ass, and you go to Ivy League school and everything like that. And then what? I don't get to enjoy my body? I mean, that's enough to make anybody go crazy, I would think, right? Yes, the trial will be very interesting. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Kasmar, for joining me live, and anybody else who might be listening. And I will see you tomorrow for This Week Astrology. And check out my links below if there's anything I can do for you. And everybody, take good care. And take good care of your back, especially. Bye, Kasmar. Bye, everybody.